Ivory Coast's president welcomes Burkina Faso's ousted leader. A U.S. election shakeup. Republicans seize the Senate, gaining full control of Congress. We'll have team coverage. And Oscar-winning actor Kevin Spacey answers his call of duty. Africa 54 starts right now.
Hello, I'm Lenore Modou. Vincent Makore is on assignment. This is Africa 54. Tonight, there is good news in the fight against the Ebola virus. The Guinean Health Ministry says the number of new cases of Ebola is declining in West Africa, while the United Nations leading Ebola official cites a significant improvement in the battle against the deadly disease. Abubakar Sidiki Diakite, the Ebola coordinator for the Guinean Health Ministry, says the number of new cases has dropped in Guinea, Sierra Leone and Liberia. He says the challenge now is to trace all the people who have come in contact with an Ebola patient.
Le suivi des contacts est majeur.
The monitoring of the contacts is very important because if you lose a contact, it's said that about 16% of the contacts develop the disease. So if you miss a contact, you've created a risk. And the risk is always important because one Ebola case is an epidemic. So we must make sure that no contact evades scrutiny. That's the real challenge.
In another development, a hospital in Switzerland began testing an experimental Ebola vaccine made by the drug company GlaxoSmithKline. 120 healthy volunteers are participating in the trial. The same trials are already underway in the United States, Britain, and Mali. Because of the size and seriousness of the Ebola outbreak, VOA and BBC are collaborating in order to give audiences in Africa and around the world access to the best information and content available. In this report, BBC's Andrew Harding tells us about the incredible risks frontline workers are facing and the grief and despair Ebola patients and their relatives are enduring in Sierra Leone.
An empty road, empty houses. We're driving into the new stronghold of the virus, and to one village at its heart. In Kigbal, a cluster of children on one side of the road. We soon discover why. On the other side, everyone is either dead or dying.
She said she's sick. She has the sickness of a turnover.
Her head is turning, so she's got a fever, presumably.
That's what she said.
Do you think it's Ebola?
It is.
We're having to be very careful where we walk. There were dead bodies all around here that were cleared up just recently, but still in the middle of this village we have Ebola victims, and there are two or three here, these women and their baby daughter, and another man just down the road, and they're all believed to have the virus. They're just being left here, presumably to die.
Next door, Momo Sese is struggling with no protective gear to care for his sick wife, Fatu.
The husband is asking the wife that if they don't heal you, what will happen to you? And the lady said she's going to die.
I'm sorry there's nothing we can do to help you, but I'm sure help will come.
Yo? Cure her. Say he's still pleading.
He pleads again for help as Fatu drifts away. Across the tarmac, the children wait. They think this side is safer, but some of them look feverish. So where are their parents?
Could you ask the children to raise their hands if they've been orphaned?
Because I've been calling, attending meetings of WFP and WHO, and I haven't got any help yet.
Nothing at all?
Nothing at all. I feel very angry about that, because my people are dying.
Mabinti is 14.
I don't feel fine, because now they're near me.
When my father became ill, they took him away, she says. I don't even know if he's dead now. So many have gone. We came to this side to avoid catching the virus.
The small brother and me big brother.
The mother is 25 years.
But there is no proper quarantine system here.
Can we see her?
Local officials have taken a handful of the more feverish children a mile up the road. Alison is 6.
Are you feeling okay? His head's aching, I'm sorry.
And so he returns to the others. If some of them don't have Ebola yet, they're now living beside people who definitely do. Andrew Harding, BBC News, Sierra Leone.
That was BBC's Andrew Harding reporting. The president of Côte d'Ivoire says ousted Burkina Faso leader Blaise Compaoré is in good spirits and says he's welcome to stay in the country for as long as he wants. President Alassane Ouattara says it's natural for Ivory Coast to welcome Mr. Compaoré following what he called the painful events in Burkina Faso. Mr. Ouattara says Mr. Compaoré is anxious for peace to be reestablished in his country after Compaoré resigned in the face of heavy protests.
I found him in good spirits, physically in good form, concerned about what happens in his country, therefore impatient that the peace is re-established and that the Burkinabe learn how to talk to each other again and live together and prepare for a democratic election.
Burkina Faso's new military leader, Lieutenant Colonel Isaac Zida, has promised to quickly hand over power to a civilian transitional government. Republicans won big in Tuesday's U.S. midterm elections, and they will now control both houses of Congress during President Barack Obama's final 2 years in office. VOA's Michael Bowman reports, even though the outcome of some contests are still in doubt, Republicans picked up enough seats to take control of the Senate and retain their large majority in the House of Representatives.
105. Yeah, so here is your ballot.
Americans cast ballots across the country Tuesday, and in key Senate races handed Democratic-held seats to Republicans. In Colorado, incumbent Democratic Senator Mark Udall was defeated by Republican challenger Cory Gardner.
Tonight, we shook up the Senate. You shook up the Senate. Tomorrow we go to work to fix a Washington that is out of step, out of touch, and out of time.
A pledge to rein in the federal government helped propel Republican Senate candidate Joni Ernst to victory in Iowa.
Getting spending under control, keeping taxes low, and cutting red tape so businesses can grow and invest.
Tuesday was not a clean sweep for Republicans, as Democrats held on to Senate seats in states like New Hampshire, where Jeanne Shaheen won another term in office.
I will work with anyone in the Senate, Democrat, Republican, Independent, to get things done.
The Senate's top Republican, Mitch McConnell, will become majority leader in January. He told supporters he hopes to work with President Obama, a Democrat, despite ideological differences.
I don't expect the president to wake up tomorrow and view the world any differently than he did when he woke up this morning. He knows I won't either. But look, we do have an obligation to work together on issues where we can agree.
Republicans also retained their majority in the House of Representatives and scored victories in several state governor contests. Many voters said they are disgusted with political gridlock between Democrats and Republicans in Washington.
They have to start doing something. And I think it just needs to change, plain and simple.
Anger with Washington played heavily in the elections, according to Republican strategist Ford O'Connell.
2/3 of America thought the country was going in the wrong direction. What they wanted was a change in direction. Now it's up to the Republicans to try to bring that change.
Tuesday's vote was a referendum on President Obama's leadership, according to American University professor Alan Lichtman, who spoke via Skype.
President Obama dragged down the Democrats. It's not as if the Republicans in this election were presenting grand ideas inspiring solutions to national problems. They were simply pinning every Democrat to an unpopular Democratic president.
Reacting to a new political reality in Washington, President Obama has invited congressional leaders of both houses and both political parties to the White House Friday. Michael Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
For more on the meaning of Tuesday's midterm elections and a look ahead of the 2016 presidential election, VOA congressional correspondent Cindy Saine joins us in the studio. And joining us from our position overlooking the U.S. Capitol is Jim Malone, VOA's national correspondent. Jim, I want to start with you. Welcome both to the program.
Thank you very much.
And Jim, first of all, the Republicans were projected to be the winners of these elections. So there are no surprises there, right?
Well, I think the only surprise might be the width and breadth of their victories. Not only did they sweep enough of the Senate races to retake a majority, they'll now be in control of Congress next year. They also did exceedingly well in the state governor races. That can have an impact on the 2016 presidential election because parties like to have governors under their control when they start looking for votes in the various states. So if anything, Republicans did even better than expected. This is a huge political blow for President Obama. Let's see how he recalibrates for the final 2 years of his term. But when presidents find themselves in this position in the past, usually they have very few options. Perhaps there's some hope here. The two sides can cooperate, but perhaps not.
Very difficult indeed. It seems that at least this way. Cindy, will the Democrat have any edge at all now that the Republicans have the control of the houses?
Well, no. I think one of the big winners as far as Capitol Hill goes is Republican Senator Mitch McConnell, who had long dreamed of becoming the majority leader and now will become so in January. And analysts are a bit pessimistic, saying we've had stalemate, we've had kind of polarization, bitterness. We may have more of the same, I'm afraid.
So then what will it take from the Democrats and the Republicans to move together for the next 2 years?
Well, President Obama is already sending a signal. He's inviting congressional leaders to the White House Friday and going to try, and there's a new political reality, look ahead, look to see what things they can get accomplished. They have to fund the government and perhaps do something on immigration reform.
And Jim, now that Cindy mentioned Senator Mitch McConnell, what kind of agenda do you anticipate that he will propose when the GOP takes over in January?
I think it'll be a mix. I think he will be eager to block the president on things that his Republican comrades don't like. They may try to undo some of the health care law. But look, what we heard from voters in the exit polls yesterday was they want Washington to work together. And Republicans, if they hope to be really serious about being viable for the 2016 presidential race, they may have to show that they can govern, that they can set aside just being blockers of legislation and actually try to reach out and do some compromising with Democrats. So the pressure will be on both parties to change. Let's see who steps up.
And who will step up? We see that President Obama still have his executive power. What do you see, Cindy?
Well, one of the things that people are already calling for is for him to do something on immigration right away, and that's one of the first tests.
Yes, yes. And Jim Malone, when you look at, in terms of foreign policy, how is this election going to affect it?
We don't know fully yet, but look, you're going to have more conservative Republicans speaking out about foreign policy in positions of authority. The Senate chairman of the various committees, like, say, Armed Services, someone like John McCain, who's already had a very strong voice on foreign policy, say on ISIL, on various other issues, including Ukraine. I think we're going to hear more from them. They're going to push the administration to be tougher. That could set up some conflicts as well.
Now, looking ahead to 2016, who are the people that stand out to you, Cindy, with regards to whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans? When we look at the presidential elections, do you think in the Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton may be the person?
Yes, she is the one name. You hit it on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, there's a whole bunch of different names, several of them senators, Ted Cruz from Texas, Rand Paul from Kentucky. So, and as Jim said, you know, having those governors' mansions in a lot of these states for Republicans helps out to pave the way for the presidential bid. So it'll be interesting to see, and that's going to start about right now.
Yes, and about right now, actually, some people say that yesterday's elections were kind of the beginning to the 2016 campaign. Who are some of the people that you anticipate, Jim Malone, to see running?
Well, I look at the Democratic side, and Hillary Clinton is by far the favorite. It's not clear she's going to run. Democrats seem to have a leader, but may have lost their way. Republicans, I think, based on the elections, think they may have found their way, but now they need to look for a leader. So both parties are a bit in turmoil for the next 2 years, and they've got 2 years to sort it out.
2 years to sort it out. Cindy, how do they sort it out?
Well, that's a good question. And like I said, they have until December 11th to at least fund the government. So that'll be test number one. And they've got some Democrats saying, President, you better step up and do something on immigration right now.
Immigration, a big issue, Jim Malone.
It is. It's a big issue for both parties. Hispanic voters did not turn out very strongly on Tuesday. I think some of them were disappointed with the president. They've been protesting at some of his speeches. Republicans have been blocking immigration. But if they want a better chance to win the White House in 2016, they may have to at least compromise on some small issues to show Hispanics they're serious about some reform.
Looking at the landscape, I guess compromise will be a big word. Cindy Sen and Jim Malone, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And thanks to both Jim Malone, VOA's national correspondent, and Cindy Sen, our congressional correspondent, for joining us today on Africa 54. While Americans are reacting and adjusting to the results of the midterm election, the attention of other countries is focused on how they can adjust the electoral system to accommodate their people and best practice democracy. Ini Thompson, visiting correspondent from our partner Channels TV, joined the tour of some delegates who observed the election.
It's the midterm elections in the United States of America. While Americans are choosing their congressmen, other nations are watching. Representatives of 55 countries have come to monitor this election and take some lessons back home. About 160 of them, representing every continent of the world, have been grouped into batches to spread the tour. The first stop for Bus 1 is a station in Arlington, Virginia, where voting is taking place in an elementary school. The election official, Alan Schneider, speaks to the group about a part of the process which makes the results trusted.
The computerized results, at the end of the day, when the polls close, we run a tape and shows what the immediate results are for this precinct. We call those in to our headquarters, and they total ours with all the others, so that the results are usually in around between 9 and 10 o'clock for the day.
Politician Don Beyer, who is a candidate in the election, has also come to see the exercise and maximize the 10 minutes is given by law at every polling station.
Voters want to be able to know that they can call us or email us or see us in their school or in their fundraiser or their home, so that we will be responsive to their needs.
Second stop is the polling station in Union Temple Baptist Church in D.C. area, with a continuous flow of voters still closely observed by the delegates.
We're seeing different types of voting, either electronic voting or touchscreen or using the ballot. And it's a very interesting concept that we find.
We have observed that the American system is a very stable system that has been developed over many years, and that is also predicated on the principle of decentralization to accommodate diversity.
So much information for the delegates to take back home, but the core of the matter is making changes that will win the trust of their citizens in their electoral processes. Ini Thompson for VOA News.
We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54, and check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Coming up, a new documentary tells the unbelievable story of an American filmmaker and fighter in Libya. Stay with us.
I am
am Sheikh Asali, host and senior editor of VOA's international call-in talk show, Straight Talk Africa.
Today we'll examine the tobacco industry.
We pretty much touch on anything that you can think of. Politics, health issues, human rights issues, you name it, we talk about it. The issues that we discuss are pertinent to most people on the African continent. A very, very rare and unique opportunity to interact with their leaders.
Welcome back. It sounds like fiction. A young American takes the road in a motorcycle journey around the Arab world and ends up fighting alongside Libyan rebels to depose Muammar Gaddafi. But it's actually a true story and the subject of an unusual documentary. VOA's Caroline Weaver has more.
In his mid-20s, Matthew Van Dyke was still living at home with his mother. In a bid to jumpstart his life, he bought a motorcycle and drove it through the Arab world, filming himself along the way with the idea of making an adventure travel movie.
A crash course in manhood.
But then came the Arab Spring.
A revolution is spreading across the Arab world.
Governments have fallen in Tunisia and Egypt. Will Libya be next?
During my travels, I made friends in Libya in 2008. And when the revolution started, I was in contact with those friends over the internet and by phone, and they told me what was happening to friends and family of theirs. And I realized that this was a place I cared about and people that I cared about, and I couldn't just sit at home and do nothing while this was happening to them.
Soon after he joined the rebels, he was injured and taken prisoner. He spent nearly 6 months in one of Gaddafi's worst prisons and thought he might be there forever if he was not executed. After a jailbreak freed him, he had only one thought.
Of course, I was going back to the front line. When I came to Libya, I told the men I was with I would stay until Libya was free. And my mother raised me to honor my commitment, so I was going to stay. I wasn't going to leave before any other prisoners of war in the country were released. I wasn't going to leave until we achieved victory.
He continued to film his experiences and those of the other fighters, who also used their cell phones to upload images to Facebook. It was the first war documented in real time by combatants.
My primary responsibility as a fighter was to the gun, not to the camera. But when there were lulls in the fighting or opportunities to also film, I did that on the side so that the guys could one day show their kids how they defeated Gaddafi and to document history, and just out of habit of setting a camera up while I'm doing something to film it for later.
When the Libyan revolution ended, he joined forces with director Marshall Curry to make his movie, no longer a simple travel adventure film. Point and Shoot won the top documentary prize at the Tribeca Film Festival last spring. Van Dyke, meanwhile, made a short film, Not Anymore, about the Syrian revolution. He's working now as an independent strategist for groups fighting both Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and the Islamic State, or ISIS.
I'm taking everything I learned over the years on the road in all the countries and in Libya especially, and finding new and creative ways to apply it, mostly in the fight against ISIS now.
As Point and Shoot opens in theaters in the U.S., Van Dyke is planning his next Middle East trip to Iraq in December, with $15,000 raised for humanitarian aid to the Kurds there. Carolyn Weaver, VOA News, New York.
It's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54, the new Call of Duty is out with an Oscar-winning villain. We'll be right back.
If you've just joined us, I'm Mariama Diallo, and here is a quick recap of today's headlines.
In Sierra Leone, the first of 6 British-run Ebola treatment centers opens near the capital in Kerry's town. In Algeria, a passenger train crashes when changing tracks in the capital, killing 1 and injuring more than 60. In Egypt, at least 16 are dead, most of them children, in a school bus crash north of Cairo. In Burkina Faso, West African leaders arrived in the country to help with the transition of power from the army back to civilian rule. Finally, in Egypt, crowds turn out to support President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the army in fighting militants.
That's it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome to Beyond Category. I'm Eric Felton. As the great Duke Ellington once said, some artists are beyond category. Join me each week as we take you inside the world of jazz and meet the musicians who make it come alive. I might even join in from time to time. It's jazz and blues and swing, music that's beyond category.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Here is what's trending.
People need a leader who can give them both the support and the constraints to keep chaos at bay. You give them that, and they'll follow.
Yes, that's Oscar-winning actor Kevin Spacey starring as the villain in the new Call of Duty video game. The game envisions a dark future where private military corporations are more powerful than governments and soldiers fight for the highest bidder. The Call of Duty series has been a monster franchise in this industry, with consumers spending more than $10 billion buying more than 175 million games. Next up, the trailer for the Minions is here, and it's a hot.
C'est la banana! Yum, yum! Ay, ay, ay.
Finding a master was easy. Keeping a master, that's where things got tricky.
The lovable Minions, who were the breakout stars of the Despicable Me films, are now starring in their very own movie. Universal Pictures has released a first look at the animation, which sees three Minions, Stuart, Kevin and Bob, go on an adventure to find a new villain to have as their master. According to the website boxofficemojo.com, the first Despicable Me film made $543 million worldwide, while its sequel scored a whopping $970 million. Minions begins its global theatrical rollout in June 2015. And finally, tattoo enthusiasts go under the needle in Mumbai. You're looking at some highlights of Mumbai's Ink International Tattoo Convention, featuring over 50 live tattoo stations, meaning attendees can get inked right here at the event. Tattoos are a highly visible part of India's contemporary pop culture, but according to established tattoo artists, the tradition in India goes back to ancient times when the names of people and religious symbols were tattooed on various body parts. The name of the convention is to rid tattoo art of its stereotypical image and promote its practitioners as creative artists. And that's what's trending today. And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. For more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings to Daybreak Africa between 300 and 600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks for watching, and good night from Washington.
Welcome to the Voice of America's News Words, where we teach you about words in the news.
Owning a home in the United States often is called the American dream. And when Americans talk about buying a home, they usually use this word:
mortgage. And while mortgage rates have risen, home buyers can take heart. They're still historically low.
Unless people pay cash for a house, they usually establish a mortgage and make regular payments on the property.
Each month, they give a bank or the property owner a set amount of money until the loan is paid. Most Americans have 30-year mortgages on their homes.
Now, when you hear the word mortgage, your English will be good enough to know what this news word means.